This title evokes an eerie, unexplainable environmental mystery phantom light that sets the stage for a slow, emotionally immersive journey. The tone suggested by the title is atmospheric and surreal. There's an element of mystery or supernatural, uncertainty layered over the collapse, quiet tension and unease. The world is not only physically destroyed, but haunted by unexplained changes, light where there should be none, a voice in the dark. The title implies that the radio broadcast is a light liner, tethered to sanity or truth amid strange new realities. The phantom light phenomenon can serve as both literal and metaphorical. Literally, a glowing anomaly in the sky or ground, inexplicable by current science, affecting ecosystems, perception, or time itself. Metaphorically, a fading signal of hope, a haunting memory of the old world, or a false promise of salvation. This opens rich opportunities for storytelling where survivors gather to watch or fear the light, old legends are reborn. The narrator questions what is real while still clinging to the one thing they can control. The radio broadcast, I switch on the transmitter and the static hisses like a wounded animal. Beyond this tin box and coil of wire, the world is unrecognizable. I step outside the shelter and the first thing I see is the sky of bruised copper haze that hasn't shifted in months. There is no sunrise or sunset now, only that relentless glow, as if the atmosphere itself were set alight by some unseen fire. The air tastes of ash and metal. Every breath scrapes the inside of my lungs. The land beneath my boots is cracked, like dried mud in an empty pond. But once this was a river valley, now the arteries of water that fed the cities run dry, leaving only dust-choked channels and sun-bleached bones of bridges. I remember when children splashed here in summer. Now their laughter seems like a fever dream. Concrete high-rises stand half buried in earth, their glass facades fractured, reflecting the sickly sky back at us like a mocking grin. Wildfires rage beyond the horizon even, in what used to be winter. Now there is no winter. The seasons collapsed under the weight of rising temperatures. I've hiked for days across plains once green with wheat. They're now nothing but ash fields, blackened stalks snapping underfoot. The wind carries embers, and at night I've watched long lines of flame crawl over hills like hungry serpents. Every dawn or passes for dawn I find new scars, etched into the land. Survivors have scattered into ragged pockets of humanity. There are no national flags flying, no functioning governments to call for aid. In some areas, marauders patrol the ruins, demanding scraps of food or gasoline in exchange for safe passage. In others, small communes persist a dozen souls huddled around rain barrels and solar panels, trading what they can scavenge for seeds or medicine. I've encountered both saints and thieves on these roads, and I've learned to mistrust both equally. The forests where they remain are ghostly. Trees stand skeletal, their trunks blackened by heat, their leaves long since turned to brittle ash. Even the rivers that still flow run a toxic red, colored by chemical runoff and algae blooms that thrive in the new temperatures. Drinking from them is suicide. I carry purification tablets that sting like acid on my tongue. I've buried friends who thought they could take just one sip. Even the landmarks bear witness to our downfall. The Capitol dome lies toppled on its side, a cracked pearl in a sea of rusted steel. The Statue of Liberty's torch has gone melted in some inferno, and her face is half buried in gravel. I found a battered interstate sign last week, Exit 42, City Center. The city center is gone, replaced by a wasteland that stretches farther than any map can chart. No institution remains intact. Schools are empty shells. Hospitals have been looted of every antibiotic and syringe. I found a university library, once shelves of books shriveled by heat, pages curling like the wings of moths. There was no point in salvaging them. Knowledge died when the grid went down, and with it went our ability to heal, to build, to remember. Money has lost all meaning. We trade in water, fuel, ammunition, even hope. I carry a handful of old-world currency in my pacata, dozen crumpled bills that I'd press into someone's hand if their life depended on it. But no one asks for money anymore. They ask, got water, or got light, as if any of us can promise the answer. And then there is the phantom light itself. Out on the plains at night, it flickers on the horizon an unearthly glow that dances across the broken skyline, casting phantom shadows that shift and stretch. It lingers over ruined towns as though marking them. Sometimes it pulses like a heartbeat. I don't know what it is: radiation, bioluminescent spores, a hallucination induced by starvation and despair, but I've seen it enough to believe it's real. It hums through the airwaves, occasionally interfering with my broadcast, turning my voice into a fractured echo. Every time I glimpse that eerie glow, my stomach clenches. It reminds me that even in this dead world, something new and unknowable can rise from the ashes. It feels like a promisor, a warning that whatever comes next won't be anything like what came before. And so I keep speaking into the microphone, mapping out this shattered landscape with words, because if I don't record it, then I might be the only one left who remembers. I am the voice you hear when you tune your dial to this lonely frequency. My name is May Calder, though these days names feel almost ceremonial, more a mark of memory than a guarantee of identity. Before the collapse, I was a field technician for a rural radio network, driving from town to town, patching antennas and coaxial cables. I loved the hum of machinery, the promise of connection that crackled through the wires. Now, my van is long gone, scrapped 4 parts I traded for water, and this makeshift studio is all that remains of my world. Each morning, I crank the generator by hand. My back protests with a dull ache, and my palms bear the scars of steel and oil. But when the signal flickers on, it feels like lighting a beacon in the dark. I survive by scavenging battery cells from abandoned ham radios, cans of protein paste from barred grocery storerooms, rainwater caught in tarps I've stitched together. Every small haul is a victory. Half a liter of clean water, a handful of energy bars, a single AA cell that might power a weather radio for an hour. I keep broadcasting not because I believe anyone is listening, though sometimes, late at night, I swear I pick up a faint reply on another frequency. I broadcast because my voice is the anchor that holds me to the world that was. When I speak into the microphone, I remind myself that once there were billions of us, each with stories worth telling. And maybe somewhere, someone else turned on their set and heard my words. Maybe they remembered that they were not alone. I lost everyone in the first year. My partner Jonah went out hunting for fresh meat and never returned. I heard the echoes of gunfire on the radio's emergency channels, and I've replayed his last transmission so many times that the words blur into static in my mind. My brother felt a fever, no medicine, no doctors, only the scrawl of his last note. Tell May to keep the signal alive. I buried him under a broken oak in what used to be my hometown park, now just a mire of red dust, and every time I pass that tree, I pause and trace my fingers over the carved letters. Mary Ann Calder, 1986-223. My losses drive me. I survived because I believed there was still something worth broadcasting about weather reports for a sky that never changed. News of wildfires burning farther east. Rumors of an underground spring somewhere beyond the mountain ridge. Every scrap of information is currency. If someone, somewhere, can find a hidden reservoir, they could flourish. If a group of survivors out there could establish a safe zone, they might rebuild. I may be the only map they'll have, yet survival has a cost. My mind drifts sometimes, chasing memories of a world painted in green. I see the meadows where wildflowers once swayed, the rivers where I once swam as a child. At night, I dream of sky blue and rain on my skin. When I wake, the generator's rasp and the hiss of static pull me back to this wasteland. I steel myself with coffee, substitute ground acorns boiled in scavenged thermosizant. I remind myself nostalgia is a luxury I cannot afford. I have learned to trust the wind, read the stars, and navigate by the scorch marks on metal. I can jury-rig a solar still from a tarpaulin and empty plastic jugs. I know which ruins still shelter canned goods always off to the side, tucked behind utility closets where looters rarely look. I understand that human life is a wisp of flame, fragile, flickering, but capable of burning through the blackest night if tended carefully. Occasionally, I run into other survivors. Some are desperate, gaunt faces haunted by hunger. Others are hardened, carrying rifles as though they were extensions of their arms. I have bartered information for supplies, telling one group the last known coordinates of a water pipeline in exchange for 2 Tetra Pak meals. I have fled from another after a tense standoff over a pair of solar cells. I have learned to walk away empty-handed rather than lose what little headspace I still possess. At the center of my shelter, I keep a small notebook, a battered spiral from the old world. Inside are logs of weather readings, coded notes on supply caches, and bits of overheard chatter from municipal emergency frequencies. I sketch crude maps of the wasteland, adding notes when I spot the phantom light dancing on the horizon. The notebook is my testament, proof that one person can bear witness to the end of everything. Someday, if these pages survive, they might guide someone new. I cling to a fragile hope that the phantom light is not a harbinger of oblivion, but a sign of something new stirring in the world. Sometimes it flares too brightly, and the radio squeals, distorting my carefully recorded dispatches into a ghostly wail. I think of Jonah's voice cracking over the airwaves, of my brother's calm farewell, and I push on-hand's steady voice, steady because I once believed in a future. Even if that belief seems absurd now, I can't help but broadcast in its name. My daily routine is a rhythm of small miracles. Sunrise, I sweep out cobwebs from the equipment rack. Midday, I test my makeshift antenna and spin the dial across frequencies, listening for signs of life. Evening, I record a weather report, temperature, wind speed, estimated ash for land, speak a few lines of encouragement into the mic. This is May Calder. You are not alone. The world has not forgotten you. I repeat it, because sometimes I need to hear it as much as anyone else. I do not know how much longer I can keep this up. Parts wear out, supplies dwindle, my body grows weaker, but as long as I can turn that crank, right up those tubes, and hold the mic to my lips, I will, for the flicker of a signal in the darkness, for the chance that someone, somewhere, hears me and thinks, I'll keep going, too. That is what keeps me alive. And until the last wave of static fades away, I'll remain a distant correspondent in the middle of a dead world bearing witness, sharing what I see and holding on to that phantom glimmer of hope. I tighten the microphone's windscreen and adjust the gain on the transmitter. Outside, the phantom light pulses on the horizon, its eerie glow mirrored by the dull ache in my chest. This is no mere curiosity, this is the flashpoint of everything that's gone wrong, but the true disaster isn't the light itself. It's the chain reaction of extreme drought and firestorms that have hollowed out the planet's lungs and left humanity gasping for breath. For 4 years straight, the skies have withheld their bounty. Rain gauges sit empty, riverbeds split like dried clay. The great aquifers beneath us ancient wells that once replenished our crops have been tapped dry. Satellites report soil moisture at bucket dry levels across entire continents. Ground temperatures routinely climb above 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 degrees Celsius in the afternoons, baking the earth into a cracked wasteland. In scientific terms, what we're experiencing is an atmospheric moisture deficit so acute it's shut down convective storms in latitudes that used to flood with monsoons every sunrise. Or what passes for one brings a new casualty count. Farm after farm has succumbed to crop failure. Wheat fields bleached white, corn stalks shriveled before tassels ever formed. Grocery store shelves are empty or gone altogether, scavenged for cans and bottles. What little arable land remains must be irrigated with trickles of water drawn from collapsing wells. But the energy required to pump those last drops is astronomical. Diesel fuel, once ubiquitous, now commands the same value as a barrel of gold if you can find any at all. Fuel shortages have ground agricultural machinery to a halt. Tractors sit silent in fields that sprout only dust devils. Trucks that once delivered food and medicine lie abandoned on highways, their engines seized, tires deflated by the relentless heat. Survivors have reverted to hauling scavenged water in backpacks and cooking over wood fires, except there are no trees left to burn. Wildfires now chase us like predators, moving faster and hotter than ever recorded in human history. When one ignites, it leaps from canopy to canopy, devouring everything in a roaring wall of flame. I've measured flame front temperatures of well over 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Meal see and grathos when I got too close on my last supply run. The heat shattered my glasses lenses and blistered my arms through my jacket. Afterward, I covered my scars with a bandana and kept moving, because to stop was to die. In scientific terms, these are crown fires, unstoppable infernos that ride the treetops and regenerate from embers carried on the wind. They turn any scrap of vegetation, no matter how damp or green it seems, into kindling. Water, too, has become a weapon. A handful of survivalist enclaves control the last functional wells. They guard them with automatic rifles and booby traps. They've even wired remote sensors to steel gates so that any unauthorized footsteps trigger alarms. I once bargained for water by giving them coordinates of a broken pipeline I'd found in the hills. They filled our 5-gallon jugs, but after that, they didn't trust me. They insisted I leave at dawn and never look back. My own reserve 6 liters in jerry cans are down to 1. I ration a ½ liter per day, using the bare minimum to reboot the generator, boil coffee substitute, and sustain my body. Dehydration that creeps in with headaches, nausea, and muscle cramps. I keep electrolyte tab salts and sugars pressed into chalky discs to stave off kidney failure, but each tablet is precious. To chew one is to acknowledge that your body is surrendering. To entropy, food is no better. What tinned goods I've hoarded past their expiration date taste like rust and regret. Protein paste nutritionally balanced but revolting feeds me, but its texture reminds me of mortar. I dream of fresh vegetables. Tomatoes juicy with acidity, lettuce crisp and verdant, carrots bursting with sweetness. Every time I hallucinate, a tomato on my tongue, I wake to the tank of dried dust. Fuel, water, and food, these are the triad of survival, and each is in brutal decline. The generator's oil reservoir is bone dry. I siphoned the last half cup from a looted lawnmower engine. Without lubrication, the bearings will seize and the whole system will lock up. I hear that some survivor groups have jury-rigged solar arrays, but photovoltaic panels are a myth in most wastelands looted or sandblasted by the constant winds. Occasionally, I scavenge fragments of cells encrusted in grit, but I've never seen one still capable of generating more than a few milliwatts. These pulses from the phantom light only make matters worse. Instruments I set out to record its frequency flare and die. Electromagnetic interference fries microcircuits last week. I lost an SDR receiver I'd jury-rigged from ham radio gear. After the interference, the device wouldn't turn on again. Scientists I used to communicate with in the old days speculated that the phenomenon might be a form of ionospheric resonance, where charged particles oscillate and refract incoming solar radiation into ghostly auroral displays. Except this Light is static, unwavering, and centered over ground hotspots rather than high in the atmosphere. Such hotspots align with areas of severe drought and wildfire activity. It's as though the planet itself has cracked open and is bleeding some strange luminescent plasma. Some theorize it's bioluminescent algae or fungus feeding on chemical byproducts of scorched earth, an unintended consequence of industrial pollution meeting extreme heat. Others whisper of government experiments gone awry, clandestine tests that pierce the stratosphere and unleashed unknown energy fields. I don't know which is true, and right now, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it hums through the radios, flickers at night, and draws desperate eyes toward ties that belong to both hopeful refugees and ruthless raiders. I've heard rumors of a firestorm that consumed an entire convoy of civilians who tried to approach the light, drawn by the promise of water or salvation. When they got too close, the heat leapfrogged over them like a detonating mine. Nothing was left but smoldering ash. I found a single shoe on the scorched ground, its laces melted into the soil. I broadcast that cautionary tale over the airwaves, hoping to save others, hoping they'd heed the warning. But stories of miracles travel faster than tales of caution, and every day more survivors slip into the wasteland in search of salvation. So I stand at my desk, face tense, voice steady. This is May Calder, I say, reporting from Grid Sector 7. Day 2047 since first broadcast. Conditions at base, water level, 2 days ration, fuel generator at 3/4 capacity, ambient temperature minus 112 degrees Fahrenheit, 44 degrees Celsius and climbing, air quality hazardous, expect ashfall overnight. If you're tuning in from a safe zone, mark the coordinates I'll announce in 30 minutes. If you're desperate, heed this advice, do not approach the phantom lights. You will not find water there, only death by fire or radiation. Instead, seek latitudes north of 42 and there are reported snowmelt springs in the Cascade foothills. I repeat, Cascade foothills, snowmelt springs. I deliver that last line slowly, articulating each syllable. I tape a crude map beside my desk, scrolling latitude and longitude alongside a starburst symbol that signals danger. This is my science-based aid, a combination of meteorological data, hydrological surveys I salvaged from an old environmental database, and eyewitness reports. It's hardly perfect, but in a world without internet or trained cartographers, it's something. I know some will try. I see it on the emergency channel's weak voices answering scrambled cries for help. I'm heading north, 8 to 2 weeks. We found a cache of MREs at milepost 27. Ambulance that radioed us hung up. I log each transmission in my notebook, marking timestamps and signal strength, cross-referencing with terrain features. Each new entry is a lifeline, a thread in the tapestry of human endurance. But every thread phrase, every minute, the sun climbs higher, the wind picks up more dust, and the phantom glow pulses stronger. The generator's sputters become more pronounced. I fear it may die before the day is out. I've scheduled maintenance for the afternoon, cleaning spark plugs, tightening belts, adding what oil I have left. If it dies, the broadcast dies, and with it goes my tenuous grasp on purpose. Purpose is survival's secret ingredient. Without the will to keep going, the thirst and hunger become insurmountable. I've seen survivors give up, sinking into their blankets like wilted flowers, and wake to nothing but silence. I cannot let that happen to myself or to anyone else listening, so I build each day around the crisis, gather data, broadcast warnings and coordinates, scavenge supplies, repair my equipment, and sleep only when exhaustion overtakes me. The crisis is total, environmental collapse feeding on itself, resource, scarcity breeding violence, and an unearthly phenomenon drawing the desperate. But crisis also forges resilience. In this broken world, our greatest weapon is knowledge and our only hope is to share it. So I keep the radio alive, message by message, because the day we lose our voice is the day we lose our last chance to rebuild. And until that day comes, I will continue mapping the collapse, explaining the science, and guiding whoever still cares to listen toward whatever slim sliver of safety remains. The wind started howling 3 nights ago, not the kind of breeze that stirs dust through alleyways or rattles a few loose window frames. This was something else hot, relentless, and filled with static. It sounded like the earth itself was exhaling through scorched lungs. I've taken to stuffing bits of cloth in the cracks of the shelter walls to keep the dust out, but it seeps in anyway, clinging to my skin, my throat, my teeth. When I speak into the microphone now, my voice is dry and cracked. The transmitter squeals with the interference of it from the wind, some from the phantom light, and some from the uncertainty I can't seem to shake off. My water ran out yesterday. There's still a bit in the emergency cache buried beneath the floor, under a piece of paneling, wrapped in cloth like a sacred relic, but I've been holding off. 2 liters if I drink it. That's 2 more days. If I don't, it might last full. Rationing becomes a mental game. Sip too much and I won't make it to the next storm. Sip too little and I lose focus. Maybe fall asleep at the mic and never wake up. Broadcasts have grown shorter. I can't waste power. The generator is spitting more black smoke with every crank. The engine blocks warped from heat. I pulled a bit of copper wiring from an old stereo system to rig a bypass on the starter coil, but I don't know how long it'll last. Sometimes, I wonder if the phantom light is doing more than interfering with radios, if it's heating the very air around it, warping the atmosphere, or maybe it's in my head. Dehydration has a way of turning facts into fever dreams. Then 2 days ago, I heard them, the unmistakable roar of engines low and guttural carving up the dry road like a warning bell. I killed the light and dropped behind the sandbags. Watched from a slit in the wall as 2 bikes and a rust-patched pickup crept down the valley. Trail, all outfitted with improvised armor, license plates bolted to doors, fencing wire wrapped over headlights. The raiders had painted their windshield with black tar, leaving only a thin slit to see through. They didn't stop, just passed by. Slow scanning. I don't know if they saw the antenna above the bunker. Maybe they didn't care, or maybe they'll be back. That night, I slept with a flare gun under my pillow. It's meant for signaling aircraft back when aircraft was still a thing, but I've loaded it with one of the magnesium rounds Jonah crafted before he vanished. A blinding burst. Hot enough to see a skin. Not exactly lethal, but enough to buy me a moment, if someone gets close. The next morning, I checked my cache. They'd taken one of the perimeter sensors. I found the casing split open and burned. No prints, no sign of a struggle, just gone. I've started logging possible escape routes in the back of my notebook. Ridgeline to the northeast. Underground service tunnels from the Oldcombe station. The ruins of the observatory, where the altitude might give me a line of sight for long-range broadcasting if the gear's still intact. I don't want to leave, but I might have to. Then came the whisper. Not a voice, not at first, just a pattern in the static. I've been listening to these frequencies long enough to hear when something shifts. Amid the white noise, something repeated. A pulse. 3 short bursts, 1 long. Then silence. Morse code, perhaps. I replayed it twice, 3 times, took notes. And just when I convinced myself it was a solar flare or some feedback loop, it repeated this time clearly, east of the divide. Spring still runs. I stared at the mic, rewound the recording, played it again, east of the divide. Spring still runs. Hope is a dangerous thing. I told myself it was bait, that maybe some survivalist group was broadcasting false leads, to lure in the desperate and rob them blind, or that someone had lost their mind and was talking in riddles. But that message didn't sound broken. It sounded calculated, deliberate, like someone who still had equipment that worked. And the phrase, spring still runs, wasn't metaphorical. It sounded like intel. I waited 2 more days for another transmission. On the second night, I got coordinates to follow. Do not broadcast others listening. Then silence. I haven't said a word of it over the radio. Just kept the usual weather reports, warnings and coordinates flowing. But inside, my mind's been racing. If it's true, if there's a functioning spring somewhere east of the divide, it changes everything. Water that flows means life. It means crops. It means I don't have to choose between broadcasting and breathing. I haven't told anyone, mostly because there's no one here to tell, but also because I don't know if I can trust the voice. Or myself. I've started packing just essentials. Water tablets, compass, the flare gun, a crank flashlight, a knife, my notebook. I leave the heavier gear antenna modules, the big batteries buried beneath sand and stone. If someone finds this place, they'll think it was already stripped clean. The real valuable is data memory purpose I take. With me, I keep checking the radio. The weather's shifting. Thunderheads rolled in yesterday. The first cloud cover I've seen in nearly a month. Not rain, never rain anymore, but the kind of sky that makes you feel like something is coiled ready to snap. The barometer is dropping fast, and my ears ache with the pressure change. Dust storms are coming. The last one blinded me for half a day. I huddled in the bunker with a mask strapped over my face, listening to the grit rasp against the metal door like fingernails. I still have sand embedded in the skin under my collarbone. This one will be worse, I can feel it. If I leave, I have to do it before the front hits. Once it's moving, visibility drops to 0, and you might as well be walking in ink. The roads vanish. Landmarks disappear. It's how I lost Naomi. Back in the 3rd year, she got caught between 2 dunes, tried to outrun it. I found her bag a week later, 3 miles from where we split up. Never found her body. Still, I'm going, not because I believe the spring is real, but because I can't stay here any longer pretending that I haven't already made up my mind. Somewhere out there, someone is transmitting. Someone has hope, or at least a reason to keep trying. If I sit in this shelter another week, I'll rot. If I go, I might die, but at least I'll be moving forward, even if it's into the mouth of a storm. Tomorrow I'll leave a final message on the broadcast. Short, simple, to listening, this is May Calder heading east. I heard your signal. If I make it, I'll let you know. Stay alive. I'll sign off with coordinates of this place just in case someone good finds it. Maybe they'll pick up where I left off. Maybe they'll finish the map. Or maybe if the signal is real, I'll return with news that the world still has something left to give. For now, I pack my things in silence and let the phantom light pulse behind me, steady as a heartbeat. It started with a shimmer, not the phantom light lying since learned to avoid looking directly at that eerie pulse, like the world's heartbeat skipping a beat too fast. No, this shimmer was something else. A ripple in the dry air, like heat rising off asphalt. But wrong somehow. More solid, more alive. I was 4 days east of the shelter by then, sunburnt, mouth parched, down to my last tablet of electrolytes and 2 sips of warm algae-tinted water. I'd followed the coordinates from the mysterious broadcast, pushing through cracked ravines and skeleton towns long since abandoned. The dust storm that chased me out of the valley caught up with me 2 nights and came roaring like a living thing, a gray tide thick enough to blot out the stars. I survived by strapping myself inside the husk of a burnt-out gas station, breathing through a soaked rag, clutching my pack like it was a child I had to protect. I barely slept, and when I did, I dreamed of Jonah's voice calling me from within the static. When I stumbled upon the shimmer, I thought I was hallucinating again, but it didn't vanish when I blinked. It hovered just above the earth, just beyond a sloped ridge where the cracked red rocks gave way to smoother ground. As I approached cautiously, the shimmer resolved into something tangible, a pressure differential, like walking through the thinnest of veils. The temperature dropped, not by much, but enough that the sweat on my back cooled into shivers. And then I smelled it. Water, not the sharp tink and staleness of old cisterns or the chemical Thames of treated runoff, but clean water, cool, mineral-rich, alive. I dropped to my knees, scraping away dirt with trembling hands until I struck stone beneath it, a slow, steady trickle. Not much, maybe a gallon an hour, but it was real. The spring was protected, hidden behind a crumpled metal fence, partially obscured by the ruins of what must have once been a research outpost. I found old solar panels smashed and useless, a shattered satellite dish, and what looked like the remains of a communications hub half buried by a landslide. But the spring had survived, buried underground, shielded by rock and steel. Maybe it had always been here. Maybe the phantom light had shielded it, or maybe no one thought to look this far east. There was a cistern, too, an old one, sealed tight. I pried it open with the crowbar and gasped, half full, about 30 liters, enough to live, enough to help others. And then the radio crackled. Not my hand held dead 3 days ago, but a frequency bouncing off the static near the spring. I moved closer. The signal was weak, but unmistakable. Repeat, this is Grid Echo 5. Coordinates verified, spring intact, awaiting further instruction. Someone was watching this place, or had been. The frequency was automated. The voice, synthetic looped, likely a decades-old emergency beacon still firing out bursts, but if I heard it, someone else could too. And if the wrong person found this, I stood at a crossroads. I could leave, hide the coordinates, keep the spring secret, live longer, survive quietly. Or I could broadcast not just to the mystery signal, but to everyone, to the whole scarred, struggling map of broken humans still clinging to life out there. Survivors, wanderers, the ones who'd never stopped listening, hoping. But I knew what that would mean. Raiders would hear it too. So would scavenger lords and survivalist cults. They'd want to control the spring, fight for it, kill for it. I'd seen it happen before. Hope makes people dangerous. I thought of Naomi, who died in a storm chasing a lead we thought might be salvation. I thought of Jonah's last words, still stored in my notebook. I thought of my brother's message, tell May to keep the signal alive. And I knew. I climbed to the ridge above the spring, set up the last portable transmitter. I had barely more than a radio pack with a 10-watt range and pointed it north. Then I pulled the mic close and pressed the button. This is May Calder, if you're tall. Hearing this, the rumors are true. There's a spring east of the divide. Grid Echo 5 coordinates to follow. Clean water, real. I've seen it. I've tasted it. My voice shook. I paused. But listen, this place is not mine. It belongs to whoever gets here and chooses not to destroy it. Don't bring war. Don't bring fire. Just come, drink, live. I paused again. I knew what I was doing. Knew this might be my last broadcast. Knew it might draw death faster than hope. But the truth was, I was tired of surviving alone. If I don't make it, if someone finds this spring after me, know that I tried. Know that we were here, that we held on, that even at the end of the world, someone believed in sharing the last good thing left. I clicked the mic off. Somewhere behind me, the phantom light shimmered, closer than ever. It pulsed, just once, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. I just sat there, breathing, watching the sun rise through the haze. I didn't know who would come or if I'd even survive long enough to see them. But for now, I had water, I had a signal, I had a voice, and that would be enough. The dust did clear dash eventually. It took 5 days. 5 long, silent, sleepless days. The storm moved across the eastern ridge like a curtain of grit and fury, choking out the sun and stripping paint off metal. I dug in beneath the outpost, in a maintenance crawl space once used for buried wiring. The smell of mildew and rust was thick enough to taste, but it kept the storm out. I rationed what little food I had left, drank from the spring one careful sip at a time, and listened to the transmitter repeat my broadcast in its slow, steady loop. By the 3rd day, I started losing my voice. A mix of strain, dehydration, and whatever mold clung to the damp walls. I coughed blood into a rag and spent hours just listening to the wind scream above me, wondering if anyone had heard. Wondering if I'd die there, curled up beside the last good thing on earth. But on the morning of the 6th day, the sky broke. Not into sunshine, those don't happen anymore, but into clarity. A dull, gray openness. The kind of sky where you can see for miles, even if what you see is still a wasteland. The air was thick with heat, but breathable again. No more static. No more interference. And the signal changed. The repeating message stopped. Just for a moment, a new voice crackled in choppy, distorted, but unmistakably human. That was all that dropped the transmitter. Just sat there, hands shaking, too afraid to believe it. I hadn't heard another voice in weeks, hadn't seen a living face in longer than I cared to count. Part of me thought I'd imagined it, a trick of hunger or madness, but the signal repeated, this time stronger. This time with coordinates, a caravan, for people moving west from the high desert. A nurse, an old shortwave engineer. To others they were real. Hope didn't come like a sunrise or a sudden warmth. It came like a drip, hesitant, small, but persistent, like the spring itself. They arrived 3 days later, dust-covered, worn thin, eyes wary. They didn't rush to embrace me. We all knew better. Trust is currency out here, and it must be earned drop by drop. But when I showed them the water, when they knelt beside the rock shelf and tasted it for themselves, something softened. We didn't talk much that first night, just shared what food we had and took turns watching the horizon. That same shimmer still flickered far off beyond the hills, quiet, now almost faded, as if it had been waiting for someone to answer its call. But in the days that followed, we got to work. The nurse Carmen cleared out the old research station and patched the roof with scrap. Eli, the engineer, resurrected a functioning solar rig. Using 2 cracked panels and a salvaged inverter, we hooked it to a battery bank and brought the transmitter back to full power. Now, every morning at dawn, the broadcast goes out again. Only this time, it's not just me. This is Echo Spring Station. If you can hear this, there's water. There's shelter. Come in peace. Bring nothing but your name, and we'll find a place for you. The message repeats on a loop, bouncing off the atmosphere, bouncing across the empty world. More have come. Not many. A family from the dead roads of Colorado, a teacher from what used to be Albuquerque, a teenager who never gave us her real name. We don't ask much, just that no weapons cross the fence, that you carry your own weight, that you help protect the spring. There was an incident. 2 men arrived pretending to be alone, but they weren't. A third waited on the ridge with a scope. They were planning to take the cistern, to force us out. We stopped them without bloodshed, but only barely. I still have the scar where the flare gun backfired, searing a line across my wrist. Afterward, we installed mirrors on the ridges, trained watchers, tripwires. Carmen says we can't be open to everyone. I say we have to try. There's a tension between survival and humanity, and we live right on the knife's edge. I don't know what the phantom light was. Still don't. It's weaker now, fading like it served its purpose and is letting go. Maybe it was just a trick of electromagnetism. Maybe a mutation in the atmosphere. Or maybe it was a beacon. Not sent to save us, but to test us, to see if we'd tear each other apart, or find a way to share what little we had left. I think about the past a lot now. The old world, the noise of it, the endless motion and convenience. It seems impossible that we once lived that way, drinking from taps without thought, burning through fossil fuel like the planet owed us eternity. Nature hasn't healed. Not really. The air is still heavy. The ground, it is still cracked. Wildfires still roam. But here, in this tiny corner east of the divide, there's a patch of green dot. We planted seeds 3 weeks ago. Peas, tomatoes, basil dots. Some are sprouting. The soil here has memory. It remembers what it means to nurture. And maybe so do we. I still broadcast at night, sometimes solo, when everyone else is asleep. I keep my voice low, reflective. I don't give coordinates anymore, just stories. Of the road, of Naomi and Jonah and all the others we lost. Of the phantom light, of the spring, of that first clear taste of water after thinking I'd die. Some nights, someone answers. Static at first. Then a voice, still listening, keep talking. I'm on my way. Hope's a fragile thing. It doesn't roar. It hums, a quiet thread woven through broken sky and scorched earth. We follow it not because it guarantees anything, but because it's all we have. This place isn't a sanctuary, not yet. Maybe, never. But it's proof. Proof that not everything was lost. Proof that even at the edge of the world, when the dust settles and the light dims, someone might still be there on the other side of the static, whispering back, I hear you. You're listening to the radio amidst a phantom light phenomenon. The nights are colder now. Maybe the phantom light really is fading. Maybe the sky is finally cooling after years of burning with that strange electric heat. Or maybe I'm just sitting still long enough to notice it, the way the stars blink more clearly overhead, no longer blurred by smoke or radiation. The way the wind no longer howls like it used to, but hums low, like it's remembering what it used to sound like before everything changed. I still keep the radio warm at night. The transmitter runs off solar now. thanks to Eli's makeshift panel array and a few car batteries scavenged from the highway dead. It's not elegant, but it works. When the generator coughs its last breath, we'll still be steady, real. Most nights, I sit on the roof of what used to be the communications shed, now patched with corrugated tin and insulation made from old clothes and twine. I hold the mic in my hand, feel the cool press of it against my fingers, and wait. Sometimes I talk, sometimes I don't. The airwaves are quieter than they used to be. Less screaming, less begging. Maybe that means more people are gone, or maybe they just stopped trying to reach out. But every so often someone answers, not with words. Always. Sometimes it's a string of taps, sometimes a single tone. Once someone sang a lullaby. I sat there, eyes closed, and let the melody fill the space between the stars. We've started a map, not the kind you'd hang in a government building. Not digital or precise, just scraps of paper, stitched together with tape and thread, marked with everything we know, where the storms tend to build, where the old roads are still passable, where we've heard voices, real ones on the air, where water still trickles, where a grove of trees might still stand. It's patchwork, fragile, fading in the corners, but it's ours. People add to it when they come through. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they move on. We let them choose. Echo Spring isn't a prison. It's a waypoint, a breath, a beginning. We still lose people. That's the part no one ever gets used to. Carmen buried a boy last week, barely 12. Ribs sharp as broken bone, lungs filled with ash. He never spoke. Just arrived one morning, barely walking, collapsed near the cistern. He made it 2 days, never gave us a name. She marked the grave with a piece of driftwood shaped like a crescent moon. There's no comfort in it, but there's truth. We're not winning, not really. The earth is still cracked and the sun still burns too hot in the afternoon. The rain, when it comes, is wrong yellowed and sharp smelling. We boil every drop, filter it twice. Even then, we ration. Old habits, necessary ones, but something is shifting. A seed sprouted in the West Garden corn, we think. Only a finger's height, tall, but standing strong. Its tiny green stalk curling toward the sky. We all took turns looking at it like it was a miracle. Maybe it is. Miracles don't have to be loud. Some days I wake up with the past curled against my chest like a weight I can't shake. Naomi's voice, Jonah's laugh, the sound of my brother tuning his guitar, ghosts of a world that died screaming. I carry them with me, not because I want to, but because I must. They deserve to be remembered, not for how they died, but for how they lived. The phantom light hasn't returned, not like before. It lingers, on the horizon sometimes just a pulse, like distant lightning, but it no longer warps the sky or scrambles our signals. Maybe it was always trying to lead us somewhere, or maybe it was just another symptom of the planet unraveling. Either way, its purpose feels spent. Now, the work is ours. We've started teaching again. A small circle of children, 2 books between them, reading by firelight while Carmen tells stories, real ones, and made-up ones, the kind that keep your chest warm even when your feet are cold. We're building something, not civilization. Not yet, but maybe. Maybe something that could grow into it, and if it doesn't, if this is all there is, just a spring in the dirt and a handful of stubborn people with cracked hands and too many memories, then that's still something. We're still something. I think that's the lesson, if there is one. That even when everything else falls apart, governments, roads, satellites, even the moonlight itself, human beings keep trying, keep moving, keep hoping, even when they shouldn't. Especially when they shouldn't. If you're hearing this, if your hands are shaking on the dial and your ribs hurt from hunger and your water's almost gone, don't stop. Keep going. Find shade. Follow the hills east if you can. Look for the shimmer in the sky. Look for the place where the static fades and you start to hear your own breath again. We're out here. You're not alone. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I've stopped pretending I can guess, but I know this. Tonight, the transmitter is still on. The spring is still flowing, and the map has grown by 3 more inches. That's enough for me. So stay alive, stay human, stay human. The world might be broken, but so are we. And sometimes broken things fit together in ways that whole ones never could. Make older Echo Spring Station broadcasting until we can't.